So we need more entrepreneurs to win. So let's go right into talking about investing into our collective futures. And the moderator of that session is going to be Kristin White, who is the Innovation Director for the Department of Transportation, the Office of Connected and Automated Vehicles. So again, your eyes, hearts, and ears for Ms. Kristin.
Well, good afternoon. Oh, come on. We have one of the best attended sessions at Twin Cities Startup Week, everyone. Come on. And it's because of this panel right here. Honestly, I am really honored to be welcomed by these thought leaders in front of you. We are going to take some time to have them introduce first their role and their vision for why we need to invest in a startup economy. And it shouldn't go left unsaid what we've heard already today. We have had a last 18 months. This hybrid environment, the masks in front of me, the fact that we're socially distanced in this space show that we are a resilient bunch. But we have an opportunity to collect in the startups of the future. And so we're going to hear from the leaders here at the state of Minnesota that do that. We're going to hear their vision, and then we're going to allow you to ask them the tough questions. So first, we're going to go through the panel and ask them to introduce their name, their role, and their vision for why Minnesota needs to invest in this startup economy and how it intersects, especially since we are the heart of the global movement for social justice, why we're talking about the intersection of tech startups and equity here at Twin Cities Startup Week. So we're going to start with my amazing colleague, Marc Majors from Deed. Then we're going to move on to Lily Shaw. We've got the two brilliant Marys here, Mary McCarthy and then Mary Rick with the City of St. Paul. And finally, Justin's going to close us out with Lab 651. So Marc, please start us off. What is your role at the state, and what is your vision for this startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Hey, thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Marc Majors, Department of Employment and Economic Development. I'm the Director of Employment and Training Services at Deed. I've been there for about 2.5 years, so glad to be here today. What we do at Deed, and particularly in my department, we oversee workforce grants. So we distribute approximately about 300 grants to about 130 organizations throughout the state of Minnesota. And essentially what we do is try to prepare the workforce for all the hiring needs for employers. In terms of the vision, I think it's very basic. Prepare a workforce to meet the needs. As we know, entrepreneurial is extremely important for advancement, technology, products and services. And so we want to create a workforce to help those businesses grow and continue contributing to the economic well-being. So thanks.
Excellent. My name is Lily Shaw, and I'm really privileged to be on this fantastic panel. I'm the VP of Client Experience with Startup Space, and we're an entrepreneurial-led economic development organization that uses tools and also technology to create democratized access to resources and data-driven impact stories. And I'm going to say also that it's really simple, because entrepreneurs solve problems. And we need a lot of problems to be solved these days. And so we need people who are innovative. We need people who are creative. We need people who have ideas to help capture the problems that we have and turn them into actuality. And entrepreneurs do that. They solve problems, and they are vital to our communities because they also connect to our communities right where the problems are. So problem solving is what we need and why we have that vision with Startup Space.
Thank you.
And hello, I am Mary McCarthy from the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers, Bulldogs, and all the other mascots. I work in technology commercialization and the Venture Center specifically, and we basically launch startups. I don't launch them myself, but I find CEOs, I train CEOs and boards. We help find grant funding and equity-based funding. We do a lot of outreach in the community to develop the ecosystem throughout the state. Because we're a land-grant university, we have a responsibility to the state and to all of you to help you as much as we can. A couple other things to note is the university has one seed fund called Discovery Capital, and I administer that. We give out, or we invest up to $350,000 in any one round of a of a raise for a startup and up to 3 rounds, so a little over $1 million. And so we've invested several $1 million in University of Minnesota startups, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Rick with the City of St. Paul, and just want to start with a thank you to Kristin and the Smart North team and Twin Cities Startup Week. This is my 3rd time back with the Smart Cities track, so it's just so cool to see how things have evolved. But you know, my work with the City of St. Paul, I serve on the Planning and Economic Development team, and in our work, we're trying to build wealth and bring high-quality jobs here. So I help lead the Full Stack St. Paul initiative, which is our tech and innovation initiative. And our mission is to leverage tech and innovation in order to drive resilient, equitable economic development. And at the end of the day, there were too many people on the sidelines, and COVID and the civil uprising and murder of George Floyd just really accelerated that need for so many of us. So just, you know, tripling down on the equity focus in our work. And St. Paul is a majority minority population in our community, and you know, corporations and small businesses and entrepreneurs, you know, we are the community, and so we need to work together with our, you know, Black and brown founders and brothers and sisters and neighbors in order to, you know, to see the tomorrow that we want.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Kristin, again, to be on this panel and get a chance to meet everybody here today. Yeah, my name's Justin Grammens. I have a company called Lab 651, 651 area code, so we're based here in the Twin Cities in St. Paul. I mean, and I've got my hands in a number of different other ventures, working with the guys at IoT Stick and a number of other organizations. So, I mean, what really drives me, honestly, and what we need more of is community. And I am really an advocate for starting community groups, starting people around technology and bringing in all sorts of walks of life, all sorts of diverse backgrounds. And I've done that through a number of organizations. We have an organization that I founded called Emerging Technologies North, and we are a diverse board of people, but we also run all sorts of different technology events. I also started the first Internet of Things Hack Day, where people would come in and what can you build in 12 hours, and it's completely open to anybody. So these are things that drive me. I also am an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas, and one of the things we try and do at Lab 651 is really bring in people that come out of these coding boot camps, you know, young students that are just coming out of school, really sort of paying it forward and really trying to help seed the next generation of not only entrepreneurs but also engineers. We have a really big gap here in the Twin Cities, I think, around talent, and I'm seeing it every day. And so rather than going to the coast to hire people, we need to start building our own community here, and we need to invest in education and inclusion and diversity and just bring more people in, because there's just a lot of great thoughts that are remaining on the sidelines. And that's my mission. That's what I'm here to talk and share more about. Thank you.
Well, thank you to these amazing panelists for sharing their vision. So next we want to talk a little bit about momentum. We feel it. There's an energy in the air in Startup Week, especially as we talk about incubators and innovating new ideas. And so I'm going to start with Justin, and then Mary, and then Lily. I'd love to hear from you. What are the types of momentum that you're seeing in this space, especially as we're thinking about incubators and innovations that are fostering innovations in tech in the intersection of equity and technology and mobility and all the things we've been talking about in this track today? So Justin, would you mind sharing your ideas on some of the things that you're seeing in this space?
Sure. I mean, some of them are clients that we work with. We work with a company called Vitals, and they actually have a piece of technology that allows people that maybe have mental conditions. So think post-traumatic stress disorder, autism, Alzheimer's disease, maybe I mentioned. So all these types of things, and there's a piece of technology that they can wear, just like a little beacon. And if these individuals get lost or they are approached by first responders, there's all sorts of information now that can come off and that can be shared by them on their mobile device. And it's really giving a voice for people that don't have a voice in some of these situations, right? And this company was started here in the Twin Cities. We've been working with them, and we've been developing the technology with them over the past 5 years or so. There's another company called Your Turn, and they're if you're familiar at all with Angie Eilers, she's another entrepreneur, woman-started company, and really wants to help students get on a good trajectory, a good path with regards to where they're going to land in their college choice as they move forward. So really around education, really around public safety, I guess. Again, a lot of it is just getting the information into the right hands of the right people and letting them to be able to make the best decisions that they can.
Excellent. Mary.
Great. So I have my cheat sheet right here from my colleague. So there's a lot happening at the University of Minnesota in this space, and I've got a few here that one of my colleagues sent me. One is work zone safety and vehicle messaging, and there are 2 or 3 pilots currently happening across the Twin Cities. Smart snowplows, which is a visual awareness for hazardous and snow blindness. Robot sidewalk delivery vehicles that can navigate in the snow in winter. Those are just 3. And then there are a bunch of others in equity-focused, more like 5G mapping, which is part of the smart city infrastructure. So yeah, there's quite a bit happening. Our office, just to explain a little bit more, takes the disclosures from the researchers across the 6,500 researchers that we have and prosecutes them and then commercializes those technologies through a license or a startup.
Of course, in Minnesota, we would innovate robotic snow plows. Absolutely. That's innovation at its finest. Lily, anything you want to add?
Yeah. I think, well, one was actually an entrepreneur that was here in this room just recently, and that's with Bus Stop Mamas, and the way she's using technology to get mamas work when they need it, I think is really innovative. I also think that calling out to some of the clients that I work with, actually, some of the ways that they're using technology to have no wrong door with accessing resources that like Startup Space is working with them to do. So some of the work that Forge North is doing in Hennepin County and along with the Chamber as well to make sure that these entrepreneurs that we are acknowledging have an access and opportunity to get the resources they need when they need it at any point in time, and also connecting with other peers and so on. So I think that Minnesota is really doing a great job in working together to make that happen.
Excellent. And we're going to move next to Marc and Mary, but is there anything you wanted to add from your perspectives on momentum in this space?
I think Lily said it very well. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well then, Marc, we got a challenging one for you. Okay. We want to talk about the challenges, right? It's been a challenging 18 months for so many reasons, and we have to continue to center these discussions on racial justice, social justice, and the gaps that we're seeing in tech. We all know these sad statistics that less than 1% of venture funding is going into Black, Indigenous, and people of color-owned businesses, especially women-owned startups. So we know we need to do better, and I just mentioned one challenge, but how is Deed looking at those statistics, and how is your program trying to innovate in that space?
Yeah, thanks. I think that's it's a great question. As I thought about this question, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is commitment. And making a commitment to investing into capital for these companies. I think also resources. There's so many side resources that go into developing a business. You have to pay the lawyers, the architects, and the marketing folks. I think there's helping those organizations get access to those experts. In addition, it's also an invitation into the ecosystem. A lot of entrepreneurial folks have a great idea, but then where do they go to like exchange ideas? And especially if you're Black or brown, you may not have necessarily that access to those groups. So giving that access. Second thing I think is obviously is the hiring. I think businesses need to make the commitment to hiring and retention. The DEI programming is so important. So it's great that you say we're going to invest in bringing in people of color into your business, but if your environment's not ready for it, meaning the other staff members, then it's not going to work. And then I think the third thing is the challenge is also a commitment to being aware that there are barriers for people to advance their businesses. Whether it's in fair lending, whether it's just complete access, as I talked about earlier, to other resources and things like that. We have to acknowledge that, and then we have to do and be solution-oriented. So those are kind of the three things I say are the biggest challenges for us.
Solutions-oriented thinkers. Mary, from the city of St. Paul, is there anything you'd like to add?
I love that, Marc. Just thinking about your remarks there. Two things that come to mind for me. We're seeing so much talent on the sidelines, and we're seeing so many openings, right? And one thing that that we talk about in a number of the, kind of partnerships that I'm part of is, what is the culture of the organization? How do you do the hiring and retention? How do you do the intentional advancement? How do you find people that have the aptitude match, but they don't necessarily have the pedigree that you're used to finding? And so how do you really, switch things up and kind of seek out folks that might actually challenge your existing culture and your existing status quo in order to both find great local talent and to continually push your organization maybe in the direction that it needs to go. Organizations like the Center for Economic Inclusion, I think, have done a really tremendous job in doing a lot of the training for some of those culture shifts and kind of meeting organizations where they are to help move those things forward. So there are tools out there too. There's leaders that are doing this work. And then I do a lot with Full Stack St. Paul. We have an initiative in partnership with City of Minneapolis called MSP Tech Hire, where we invest in tech training scholarships. And so it's also one of our unique public-private partnerships where Prime Academy, for example, is one of our key partners. They do some of the best boot camp training and full stack engineering. We're paying for folks that are currently underrepresented in that field to get free scholarships. So putting that plug out there. But you have then this host of all of these incredible grads, but they don't necessarily have that next step and all of the apprenticeship needs or kind of junior dev opportunities. So really looking at that gap in the pipeline as well.
Awesome. I saw Justin nodding his head. Is there anything our other panelists wanted to share about top challenges for investing in this space?
I was just going to give a shout out to Prime. We've hired a number of their graduates, and I think it can be difficult, even though if you have the skills coming out of a boot camp like that, you're still not plugged into the network. And so having people sort of reach down and help pull them up is something that needs to be done.
Excellent. So my next question is for each panelist, and I think we'll start with you, Marc. There's a lot of innovations we already heard about today, but is there a particular private sector organization, social impact company, or group that you're following, or conversely, anyone that you wish was filling in gaps in this space?
I'll talk about two fronts. On the workforce development side, I'm looking at Black tech talent, and I'm also looking at a new program just launched by a greater MSP called Connect MSP. In addition, Indeed, we just actually launched a $1 million pilot program on how to encourage training for BIPOC communities in general. So Prime Digital Academy, Phyllis Wheatley, Software for Good, and Minnesota State IT Excellence are all our partners on that. On the workforce side, Launch Minnesota, of course, right? And my colleagues over there, a little shout out. And I know that they're working with some great organizations like the Black Founders, Brown Ventures, 2043 Philanthropy, Knight Foundation, and so on. So we're watching all those organizations because we think that they're doing some really exceptional work in this sphere, and we're hoping they're going to advance more equity into the tech industry.
Lily?
Yeah, some real standouts to me is I think Lunar does a fantastic job in terms of supporting female entrepreneurs and BIPOC entrepreneurs, both with tech and then across the entrepreneurial landscape. I think they do fantastic work. Also, some of the things that Meta is doing with their online accelerator, connecting BIPOC entrepreneurs with executives, so important to have that introduction that you might not normally have. I also think some of the work that Hennepin County is doing with Elevate in terms of connecting to advisors, because then they're really engaging the entrepreneurial ecosystem and those organizations and connecting them to entrepreneurs, again, that open door access. And then, of course, I'm always a huge fan for the Coven and the programming that the Coven is doing and the pivot that they did from being a co-working space. What do you do when all of a sudden you can't be in a co-working space, in that community that they continued to build even when the doors had to be shut, online that community, and the access to their programming, which is remarkable. So I'm really love our community and the things and the progressive things that they're doing.
Amazing. Very.
So at the U, the U is like a city unto itself, and there's many programs going on just within the U, but one trend recently has been doing even more outreach and free programming and putting on pitch events like just this last Friday with Neela We put on Minnesota Ventures. It's a pitch event where we had over 50 investors listening to 13 different pitches from throughout Minnesota. A few of the things that we're uniquely situated to do is to help funds such as Brown Ventures, because they're trying to close their fund and they need some institutional investors to invest, or some big angels. So making some connections there where we can to help them close their fund so that they can in turn invest in you all or anybody that they want to. Another program that we've got is Discovery Launchpad, which is a little incubator that we used to only work with University of Minnesota startups in, but we've opened it up thanks to a grant from DEED to all startups throughout the state who have been grantees of Launch Minnesota. And what it gives you is like thousands of dollars worth of free consulting help customized to your specific business challenges. And we've got people who have had exits, who have done M&A deals for Medtronic, and just very great resumes who are there at your bidding to help you out. It's about a 8 to 10 week program, and you set up objectives at the beginning, and then you track to them over time. And then you eventually sort of are off on your own, but we always get questions like, hey, it's this one investor, do you know this person? And then we help them still as much as we can.
All right, there's a lot of great organizations that have already been named, so this is getting complicated. But I might, kind of check a couple boxes again. I'm definitely very proud of our full stack steering committee. Has a pretty killer group of leaders on it right now. Dr. Paul Campbell from Brown Venture Group, we're super excited. You know, we already kind of in the news had the $10 million commitment from Best Buy. And just for folks that are not familiar, it's a minority-led VC firm that is specifically focused on minority-led companies in the tech space. So just wanted to kind of underscore that, because I think we'll see more and more of that as well. Lunar Startups also has been doing their incubator accelerator focused on Black and brown founders, LGBTQ folks, women. So, you know, these underrepresented communities, there is value that is sitting on the sidelines. I also want to call out University Enterprise Labs, right, where we're seated, right? Like Diane Rucker and her team, they have a G-Beta MedTech accelerator. This fall, the cohort is specifically for Black founders, right? Like, I've never seen that before. MedTech, accelerator for Black founders. I just love it. And so folks are really, really pushing and doing new and very important things right now. So those are a few on my list.
Oh yeah, it is hard. There's so many great ones. I think the one that came to mind that hasn't been mentioned is the SciTech experience. Becky Siekmeyer, if you're familiar at all with that. MN Tech, they help organizations like me, small organizations, help pay for their internships over the summer. And there's a cap, max, but there's no reason for an organization, actually of all sizes, any size, to bring an intern in. Right? They will literally pay for that. So that's completely off the table. So, and these interns are, from all walks of life, and it's a great organization. So that's funded by the state of Minnesota. A lot of these other ones I just don't know about, and I think we need to get better at the Targets and the Best Buys. They all talk to large organizations like yours, but I don't hear a whole lot of talking to companies of my size. Another idea that I've had, and from the back of my mind for many years, is just this idea of a bookend organization. You have people that are ending their careers, that are in their 60s, and you have people that are starting their careers in their 20s, right? So there's a beautiful opportunity to start having mentorships going on and literally building a business model around this, where you basically say, look, we're taking people that are sort of semi-retired. They don't need to work a whole lot. We don't need to pay them a whole lot, right? And then you got these young students that are coming up that they want to work a lot, right? And we don't need to pay them a whole lot. And I think there is a great, there's an economic value, but there's also just a community value of putting together an organization that actually takes this mindset. It's built into the DNA and the core idea that you're going to be training the next generation using the generation of the people that are, still have a lot left in them, to be honest. So that's an idea that I've had. It's been incubating in my head, and who knows, maybe that'll be the next thing I'll start. But yeah, that's another thing on my mind.
Always innovators, right? Innovating right as they're giving their presentations. So we're hearing incredible themes that are not new to us, right? Inclusion, access, connection, collaboration, new organizations and mentorships. So my question is for each and one of you, and I'll just allow anyone to start up. What are, if any, the new institutions that we need? We have private venture capital. We have smaller institutions. Justin mentioned some of the larger corporate sponsors. Do we need different public-private people-oriented models to help collaborate and convene all these different connectors? Maybe it's a rhetorical question, but I think our bright panel can come up with some ideas.
I can start. So we've been diving headfirst into many of these private partnerships, as they're called, including with Medical Alley, Deed, and other greater MSP. Then you've got the Bold North, Minnesota Cup, et cetera. So I'd say that the relationships are there. I'm not sure we need more organizations. We just need better co-programming and alignment of our strategic objectives so that we can all be supportive of each other in our programming throughout the year.
Yeah.
You know, Mary, I'm going to go off of that. I agree. I think that, you know, the hub and spoke model that's starting with the SBA is that needs to happen more, because I think where there's the centralized aspect of programming, but you can't always access everybody that needs it. And you need to be able to give it to communities where there's trust built up, where community members will go to that local neighborhood development organization to be able to get the information they need because they trust that person there. So I think we really need to, I agree, you know, not more organizations, but let's work together better. I think we also need to look at some of the, you know, the things dealing with policy, right? With Right to Start, what Victor Wang is working on in terms of really making these things happen within policy. So it's not just us, all of us just working, constantly reinventing the wheel, creating these hub and spokes, but let's get it into policy so it's something that, you know, Neolilla with Launch Minnesota doesn't have to fight for each time to get the funding to do very vital programming, and also other organizations as well.
Excellent. Any other thoughts from our panelists?
I would agree with what was said. I mean, I think we were just kind of talking amongst ourselves, like, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? So like this assessment on what is the ecosystem and what does it really have to offer, and then I think you go back to my solution-oriented kind of piece is kind of like how do we address those issues that some of them I brought up and some of the other panelists brought up, and really take an aggressive approach to making sure we do find answers to getting more people of color into the tech industry and more black and brown entrepreneurs and into our ecosystem. So I don't think we need to necessarily in terms of grow numbers, but to grow in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Growing that fabric across the state.
Yeah.
I love it. Absolutely. Anything else our panelists want to add before we open it up?
I would just double down on that. I mean, I think there's so many, rich and very diverse organizations already existing, but many of which don't know each other. And so how do we align our work in order to scale our work? And the idea of trusted messengers was something that we talked about a lot with the city of St. Paul. And just one quick example, COVID hit and, the civil uprising, and there were a lot of corporate partners that were saying, how can we help? What can we do? And offering technical assistance was one of those buckets that I was working on. And it was really, really challenging to figure out how best to engage folks when they had no existing relationship. And really looking at the neighborhood-based organizations, the folks that are on the ground, the folks that do have those relationships, and just making sure that they're also incentivized and part of that solution going forward, because they're gonna, folks are gonna listen to the people that they know and that they trust. And that's part of the solution. It's not all the new fancy tech folks that come in, and that there's a role for everybody.
And Mary perfectly relates this to our morning panel where we talked about equity in the digital infrastructure of the future and how if it's not created by us, it's not for us. So now we're going to allow all of you in the audience, both in person and virtually, to share any questions with us. And so start thinking about those. I have one last question I did not prep our panelists on, but based off what Mary just said, what is just one thing you wish listeners knew about investing in our collective futures? If you want to start with Marc, we'll put you on the spot.
Sure, thanks, Kristin. The one thing, there's so many. I And I'm going to go back and say the same thing I said earlier. It's that commitment piece. You know, we just have to make the commitment to make this a priority for us to, you know, advance integrating more people of color into the ecosystem. So I would say that that would be the biggest one.
I would say we all have a little bit of entrepreneurialism in us, and that we need to, when we see ideas, we need to foster that idea. We need to encourage, we need to support, we need to point in the right direction, and we need to make sure that there are no wrong doors for somebody to start their idea and solve a problem. And so we just need to make sure that all of us have that growth mindset, and we're not making determinations on whether somebody is right to start a business or not.
I'd say, so I had launched a product-based business like 6 years ago now, and I learned a lot, but it was not financially successful. And when you're an entrepreneur and you come up with an idea, you don't know that there's this vast world of people out there that want to help, and a lot of money and kindness and support. So it feels like we need to do a better job reaching out to those who have an entrepreneurial inclination and reach them before they actually take the leap and leave their job. Start getting messages out there earlier in their career journey.
I will say it's all about relationships and just investing in new relationships and existing relationships, and you know, it helps a company go further faster. It helps somebody find that next job opportunity. And you know, at the City of St. Paul, we're trying to solve a lot of the problems that folks on this panel are doing. And so for us, in relationship to ask those questions, and we have a bucket of resources, but they're certainly not the perfect fit for everybody, but they're a fit for some. And so how can our resources be paired with your resources, and help folks go further faster, because we understand what one another's doing.
Love it.
Yeah, I guess for me, it just comes down to the community and actually allowing people to realize that they can start things, right? If something isn't there already, I mentioned it before, but Meetup is a beautiful thing. You can start your own group, and I've seen this over and over, where you can basically say, look, I'm interested in this, in building this. And getting the word out, it can basically, wonderful things will happen, and I think once the community starts becoming more and more engaged, it really needs to start, in my opinion, at the grassroots level, right? There isn't going to be some magical dollars that's going to come filtering down. I really think it needs to start from the bottom up. And I think, we're trying here, but I think it really starts with the citizens and the people to basically sort of taking ownership and trying to drive it up as well.
You heard it from these experts. We are all entrepreneurs, and we are all here for you and each other as we innovate together. So let's go to our digital audience. Are there any questions for this panel?
This is number 7. We don't have any specific questions, but a couple of reflections about what has been said. Sean Spence says, very typical of Minnesota culture is that we need to be able to do better, to better connect organizations to each other and people to each other. So kind of agreeing about that problem. And then Ari Odaya says, we need to redefine early stage and build models that truly support startups, especially BIPOC founders, where they truly have to start. Family and friends round is a barrier. MVP prototypes and revenue traction just to gain access to knowledge-based programming and network is a barrier, and frankly biased.
Well, thank you to our folks online. Any reflections from our panelists on those comments?
I will just add one quick thing that it makes me think of in terms of BIPOC founders and early stage founders and getting into this. As we're also talking about tech talent and workforce, I would love to see, and am advocating it at every point that I can, more entrepreneurship training and business training with our workforce dollars. And that I think that's just been something that's been overlooked in this country, and in a larger scale, it's been training to work for somebody else. And so how can we invest in the real community wealth building opportunities like business ownership, or real estate ownership, and these other opportunities that are not kind of typically thought of when you're looking at workforce training.
guess that's over to me. Yeah, I think, that's one of the challenges for me as I work with a great deal of federal funds. And so sometimes I'm actually bound by what I can use the funding for and what I cannot use the funding for. But I think, when you start looking at state funds, some of the programming that we do is Women's Economic Security Act programming that we do invest in. But again, that's kind of capped, not by myself, but by, obviously legislators. So I think that there's opportunities, particularly on the state funding, and there's a need for more discussion around that and advocacy to put towards actually helping entrepreneurs develop, everything from their business plans to learning how to do their finances to marketing and so on. So I won't encourage as a state employee that folks go and advocate, but I will say there's an opportunity there for those who are not state employees.
And it comes back to policy, right, as Lily mentioned. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that it's all about policy and making sure that we get those things written down so we can move forward. And also, to the point of funding for BIPOC entrepreneurs, I think it's extremely important that we look at that as a state, and we're making sure that we're continuing to invest in our futures in that way, and that we're not investing continually in the same people or the same organizations or investing in the same types.
And holding ourselves accountable.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd be remiss if I didn't plug Minnesota Venture Builders, which is a program out of the Carlson School, and it's all free, and it's online, and it's developing your value proposition, how to talk to customers, product market fit, and some other topics. So in that way, we are working towards democratizing information so that entrepreneurs anywhere have access to what they need to be successful.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's also Red Wing Ignite, and I think one of the other sponsors out here, IL2 Studios as well. I know they run a lot of programs for free. I think it's paid by the state or some other organization, but yeah, I've known a number of companies that have gone through their sort of 8 to 10 week sort of boot camps, and they talk through a lot of these business challenges and putting together sort of their first stage.
Excellent. So we have a little bit of time left, and I see there are some questions. Let's go over to one of our founders from our pitch event. The floor is yours. Want to introduce your name?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Marlena. I have a question and a comment. I'm sorry, I'm still remembering names, but what you said earlier definitely resonated with me when you talk about access and retention for Black talent. And I will pose the question that I asked to a group of community leaders where commonly their focus were on the BIPOC community, that, yeah, we want to support the BIPOC community, we want to get more leaders in tech. And by the way, I am the chapter president for Blacks in Technology, where this is the focus. I would love to get everyone's business cards in here. My question was on that retention, and being a person who do work in tech, that retention part is a bit of a concern. Like, I was able to get access, and a lot of my fellow Black technologists were able to get access, but we weren't able to stay in our jobs, whether because we just didn't like the culture, it wasn't fitting, or we just didn't have that mentorship or guidance to grow in a career. So the question I want to pose is, like, what initiatives are being done to focus on that culture aspect to make sure that the career is a safe space for a BIPOC community to thrive and to grow in their career? Forgot my other question, but that was it on that one.
That's a great question. And I think that there's, I know you all heard this 15 times from me already, but I think it's, again, that commitment. And I think it's commitment from the leadership, and, you have to have your CEO or you have to have your executives say, we are going to concentrate on. This is going to be our focus, and there's going to be some OKRs tied to this, like I have in my agency, that we're going to definitely, we want to invite BIPOC community folks in. We want them to stay, we want them to advance, and it's not just getting them in the door, right, is what you're kind of saying. But what is the trajectory? And having a plan to make sure that they have a mentor. But I think it's also a little bit that DEI stuff I talked about earlier, which is also educating current employees and saying, listen, this is our commitment, and you need to get on board. I mean, I hate to be so harsh about it, but you need to get on board, and you know, this is where we're going. And when that trickles down, that makes a difference. And again, I'll go back to the OKRs for the executives, that they need to say, this is what our commitment is going to be, and that we're going to be held accountable for it. But I agree, dependent mentorship, key. I mean, I've been in a number of environments where I'm the only one, and have been challenged. And sometimes it's really hard. You go home and you kind of ask, why am I doing this? But I would say, keep it up, okay? And keep moving forward.
And maybe even building on that, I might add, don't lose faith, because it's not just about mentorship, it's about sponsorship too. It's about making sure that if you're not on the table, there is someone there at the table advocating for you that will clear the path for you. And I would argue that anyone on this panel is a new sponsor for anyone here at Twin Cities Startup Week. So thank you, Marc. Thank you for the fantastic question. Hopefully you two can connect offline. I know there was another question over here. Let's go over there in the back, and then we'll come to you, Kai.
My name is Mo, and I have a question. Most of these programs, I'm hearing it for the first time, and I live here in Minneapolis. How come it's not publicized enough for us Black founders to know about this program?
Well, this is called Stump the Panel portion, so any takers?
Yeah.
Well, we can both go. I mean, I was going to say, I mean, it's about, you know, the communities that we're in, and I mean, it is sad that, you know, a Black founder doesn't know about some of the resources, and so I think that's on all of us, right? That we haven't been doing the, you know, the communications work and the relationship building, you know, where we need to. I mean, I'll put a plug in for fullstackstpaul.com, fullstackstpaul.com. We have a list of resources on that page for folks that are in St. Paul in particular. Twin Cities Startup Week in Beta has a ton of resources. Forge North has a ton of resources. There's some of these, you know, groups that have kind of roll-up resources, and pass over to Lily.
Well, I was going to
Startup Space.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Forge North and Startup Space working with Forge North. So if you look at Forge North online and you go to their resource compass, that compass has got over 700 resources that you can filter by what you're interested in, how you identify, what stage you're at. And I've worked very hard with Forge North to work on categorizing that. And we have to continue to do it, right? Because things change, new resources come aboard. More, you know, we need to make sure that there's no gaps in it. And if there is a gap, you need to let us know, right? So there's a community calendar as well, where we pull in as many different calendars as we can, because sometimes it's hard to go to a whole bunch of different websites, right? You want to go to one place where you can look for everything, you can find what you need at that time. So Startup Space worked with Forge North to create the Min Resource Compass. So I want to encourage you to go there and to look for what you need, and then to reach out also to Forge North or anyone in that community calendar. All those entrepreneur support organizations are there for you, and I think that would be a great first step for you.
If I may, though, I would like, either offline or here, could you tell us what is the best way to reach your community?
I started a company newly, and it was just from talking with investors that I heard about Twin City Startup Week. And I was like, whoa, we have something like that here. And I didn't know. So if there was more social media presence, more like, you know, more publications on the media, like the radio or something, we do listen to those, and we can get information from those, not just like when I'm talking to an investor and they were like, there's this kind of program available for you. And I was like, okay, I just didn't know about that. And, you know, you talk to other fellow founders, and they tell you like, oh, there's this program like this, but these are the kind of people they invest in, or these are the kind of people they take on with. But when we have more access to this kind of information that helps the BIPOC community, it will help a lot of founders and Black tech engineers and developers out there to know like they have resources available to them.
I'm hearing we need a TikTok for Twin Cities Startup Week.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think at Deed, we have an aggressive communications platform. I mean, we do more blogs than I can even think of. There's constant shooting out information on LinkedIn and other platforms. But I think it gets back to what we were kind of talking about. How do you know that, right? And how do you know that Deed does this? And what do we do? And it goes back to how do we collectively kind of put our message out? And some of the things that we're doing is actually our Deputy Commissioner Warfa, he's going out on the different radio stations and talking about, we other staff going to our more targeted ethnic media outlets to kind of talk about our programming. And then I talked about OKRs earlier. I mean, we have to ramp it up again this year and really do a continued outreach. And that's on, at least at Deed, one of our priorities is to get our message out and to let people know about our programs. So.
Excellent.
Yes, and I wanted to comment on this because at Eterna Media, this is something we've been so passionate about from the beginning. And many of you guys don't know, Eterna Media is a minority-owned business. And one of the things that our niche is cause marketing. And we've worked with several different organizations on trying to get the word out. And just being an entrepreneur myself, beginning this company in 2019, the hardest part was to find the fundings and the connecting with the organizations. And one thing that I believe Mary said this was it's about relationships. Everything that came to my company was through somebody I knew, somebody's hand that I shook, right? So it's like we have to create this economy where these organizations have people who are building these relationships in the community, right? Not only with individuals, but with organizations. And have strong social media messaging. What are the social media campaigns that are out there? How are we using innovative, strategic campaigns, influencer marketing, and so much more? And that's something that myself and Will Preble pride ourselves in, is really trying to figure out ways. We created a tool called DonateAPost.org that uses people's likeness and millennials' likeness to be able to donate a post to causes or organizations or entrepreneurs of their choice. There's so many different things. Shop Local platform that we've been working on that highlights the local businesses and communities. So it's how can we connect everybody together and make those resources more available, and the messaging, because everybody communicates differently, you know what I mean? And with the rising immigrant population in our communities, the communication barriers are becoming more and more difficult. So we have to kind of really rethink that and figure out how are we connecting to each different communities and the diverse communities that we're in. And that's something that's like one of our main focus is that in Eterna Media. And we believe we can do that through technology.
Well, Tayo perfectly closes us out. Welcome and thank you to our panelists. They will be available in the lobby, and thank you for joining us today.